For those of you new to the MMO landscape, I understand that starting Final Fantasy XIV can be both an overwhelming and frightening prospect. I was in the same boat myself 8 years ago when I picked up A Realm Reborn a few months after release. Admittedly, I didn't stick around for long, as the way Final Fantasy ran on PS3 was, let's just say subpar. But 6 months later, I decided to give it another go on my shiny new PS4, and Square Enix at the time offering a free next-gen upgrade. With the game now running at a solid 60 frames per second and the use of an actual mouse, it wasn't long before I found myself hooked as a permanent resident as a sexy cat girl in Eorzea. With the recent announcement of Endwalkers and the wrap-up of Final Fantasy XIV's current story arc, interest in the game has never been higher. I liken it to Marvel's Infinity War in Endgame films, a decades-long journey spanning across multiple installments, all culminating to this epic conclusion. And with so many single-player fans being introduced to the game via Soldier and Night Sky Princess streams and videos, I figured now was a good time as any for a guide of sorts for Final Fantasy XIV in 2021. The narrative is probably the biggest draw for most, as it well should be. The franchise is well known for its tales of superpowered teens and young adults saving the world from evil clowns, really angry cheese, and David Bowie. But you'd be forgiven for not thinking the same of 14, especially since MMOs aren't necessarily known for having stellar stories. Or at least that's what I'm told. I only bought this one because I saw the letters FF in Roman numerals on the box. So how does 14 hold up in comparison? Is the story any good? And the answer to that is yes! Asterisk. Final Fantasy XIV is easily the best of the franchise, narratively speaking. Between your struggles against the Garlean Empire and thwarting the evil machinations of interdimensional wizards, Final Fantasy XIV stands head and shoulders above any narrative Square Enix has produced thus far. And there's good reason for this. The game's story was carefully crafted years in advance in order to create the ultimate Final Fantasy experience. Even if it doesn't quite start out that way, the game is currently broken down into 4, soon-to-be 5 chapters: A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and later this year, Endwalker. A Realm Reborn is the first chapter of the revamped MMO, which was praised for the incredible comeback it made after the disaster that was its original launch. The story of A Realm Reborn is mostly set up for those future expansions I listed earlier, and is designed to ease newcomers into the genre. A lot of A Realm Reborn is lore dumping and world building that's essential for those expansions, which leaves a lot to be desired for the in-the-moment storytelling. You can tell from the sparse voice acting, minimal interactions, and multiple fetch quests that A Realm Reborn's narrative presentation suffered the most from its timetable. A game that was pushed to release to save the failing MMO. What really kept me logging back in each night during the 2.x days were the stellar class design that harkens back to old school Final Fantasy. Paladins tanking and covering the party, mitigating damage, white mages healing and keeping the party healthy, all while your monk pummeled enemies into oblivion. Toss in some stellar raids against classic summons like Rama, Bahamut, and Shiva, it's easy to see why a die-hard Final Fantasy fan would feel right at home. Thankfully, The Realm Reborn today is a very different game from what I played 8 years ago. The game's multiple updates have seen adjustments to the questing experience, especially for Realm Reborn, which saw a chunk of its less engaging main story quests either removed or redesigned to make it less tedious. The addition of flight added to Realm Reborn areas, which was previously exclusive to expansion zones, has hastened the back and forth in questing, now making A Realm Reduced more accessible than ever. Now, I know many of you are downright terrified at the thought of actually having to interact with another human being while playing your video games, going so far as to denounce the game for having the audacity to force a multiplayer experience on the sanctity that is the mainline Final Fantasy series. Well, you'll be glad to know that you can play 95% of the game entirely solo if you so choose. The game's story is mostly a solo experience, though at certain points you are required to run dungeons and trial boss fights with other players, and even then the interaction is limited. You simply show up to the duty and perform your role to the best of your ability. You're usually too busy cutting down mobs or healing your party members to actually interact with them outside of that. And no need to join a guild or actually have any friends at all, as the handy-dandy duty finder will automatically match you up with randoms in order to complete the duty. That being said, I'd still suggest playing alongside friends in order to have the most optimal experience. At the end of the day, the game is an MMO. It was meant to be played alongside other people, and I can't help but find it ironic for a genre built on the power of friendship that so many fans are perturbed at the thought of a shared Final Fantasy experience. Everything from combat mechanics to the markets and so much more were designed with group play in mind. Everything's better with friends, whether that be a gunbreaker buddy to help you queue up into dungeons faster, or a crafter friend to make new gear and armor for you as you level. Playing solo is fine, but the best treasures will always be the friends you make along the way. Combat is of the hotkey tap targeting variety, standard MMO fare but with the Final Fantasy twist. Each job is based off classic Final Fantasy roles seen in games like Tactics or 5. Each job is both visually and mechanically distinct, with special job-specific meters and gauges that keep track of resources and other mechanics for your class, such as the Dark Knight's Blood Gauge or the Warrior's Peace Gauge. Admittedly, combat for each job starts out a little slow, and while the in-game combat will have you performing incredible combos and intense supers against interdimensional gods of chaos and darkness, the first few hours, or even days if you're a more casual player, can drag a bit. But keep in mind, as an MMO, Final Fantasy XIV is a marathon, not a race. Pace yourself and take it in stride. Final Fantasy XIV is about the journey, not the destination, and rewards players who take the time to stop and smell the roses. Indeed, much like any other Final Fantasy game, there's a variety of mini-games and side activities outside of combat and story. Crafting and gathering jobs allow you to work the land and use those resources to craft gear, weapons, potions, and other necessities. There's also housing, which... And it's when I got to this part of the script that I realized I lost my in-game house like a f***ing week ago, or more like a month ago for y'all viewing this now, because I take forever to script and edit. This is the part where I'd show you footage of my house if I still had one. I worked so hard on it. Eorzea has its own iteration of Final Fantasy VII's Gold Saucer, which comes with chocobo racing as well as a variety of other minigames, the most notable being Triple Triad, which, much like Final Fantasy VIII, can be played with NPCs across the realm as well as other player characters. Yoshi P has also hinted at a new minigame at their digital event. We were supposed to get Blitzball back during Stormblood, so maybe that's finally coming to fruition. Over the years, I've been a part of multiple JRPG communities, from Ultima to Reddit and even more obscure websites. And regardless of where I've gone when Final Fantasy comes up, there's always been the need to categorize and group the different games into all kinds of classifications, whether that be spin-offs, pre- and post-merger, MMO, or otherwise. What I've come to learn over the past decade is that regardless of how you wish to define the franchise, the differences are trite when it comes to storytelling and narrative. Final Fantasy XIV won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I'll be damned if it isn't the hottest, freshest brew the franchise has come with in a long, long time. In 2021, Final Fantasy XIV is not only the best MMO in the market, but the best Final Fantasy game in the franchise. And with both A Realm Reborn and Heavensward available for free, there's literally no reason not to give the game a try today. Let me know in the comments if you've any questions about the game, or share your most memorable experiences in Eorzea.
Man, shout out to everyone for making it to the end of the video. I know I say it in every video, but it's been like 8 months since the last time I posted some content, so apologizing don't even make no sense. And honestly, this isn't even necessarily a return to normal posting, but you know, due to unfortunate circumstances, I have a lot more free time on my hands right now, so I figured I'd go ahead, finish this video, and push it on out. But honestly, you know, I want to return to content creation eventually, like regular content creation, but being a parent and working full time left me with little to no free time to enjoy my own hobbies, friends, or family, let alone the time to play the games I make videos on and then script and edit and create that content. But, you know, everything happened for a reason. Just like how I've been given the chance to finish up, you know, this video that I had been sitting on for months now. And while it may be a while before I put any more content out, just know that this isn't goodbye. This is until we meet again.